Hello and welcome to 6 Minutes, the shortened version of 60 Minutes for our fast-paced viewers. I'm Sophia Weber, your host, and today I'll be interviewing two experts about the recent flooding in Bangladesh. My first guest, scientist Annabelle Duval. Annabelle, welcome to our show. Let me start by asking you to give a brief explanation of what causes such intense flooding.
Of course. The source of the Bangladesh flooding is water from the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers, which all flow into the same river basin, which you can see here. These are the three rivers that flow into this section of Bangladesh. Of course, some flooding in Bangladesh is normal, but 2017 brought some of the worst flooding in the past 40 years. Climate change has really been the driving factor in the disastrous nature of these floods. Rising global temperatures increase the volume and frequency of floods, as they can cause heavier monsoon rains and increased glacial melt from the Himalayas. Additionally, deforestation, increasing urban areas, and low-lying rice paddies have decreased the land's natural capacity for managing excess water. The loss of land to flooding affects over 41 million people and can destroy homes, kill livestock, and ruin crops.
So, what has the Bangladesh government done to help local communities in the short term?
Great question. To help those affected, governments have provided short-term aid in the form of food, medical aid, and water purification tablets. When wells and other sources of clean water are contaminated by the floods, these tablets can prevent waterborne diseases from spreading among victims. Communities can also try to repair broken embankments to control the water flow. To help farmers who lose their crops, local governments have given out free seeds. Flood-proof shelters to provide a place to stay for displaced peoples are also vital for decreasing death from the floods, especially for sick people, infants, and the elderly.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from journalist Alexander Kalicki. Mr. Kalicki, can you discuss what actions are best to handle this flooding for the long term?
First, a new flood warning system and emergency preparations are necessary to help communities prepare for flash floods and attempt to decrease casualties. If people who live in affected areas can get a warning days or even hours in advance, they can evacuate and protect their families. This is an example of a group of people who have been displaced because of flooding, and we can prevent this with the proper emergency evacuation preparations. Secondly, the reduction of deforestation and construction of dams will help to divert water flow away from populated areas and minimize destruction. When vegetation is thick, the roots help to keep the soil in place instead of getting washed away and eroded. Once the flooding has subsided, flood-resistant housing and improved farming strategies will help minimize destruction and economic loss to those who are in the pathway of the floods. Farmers have recently been advised to leave the roots of their rice plants in the ground during monsoon season, which will maintain structural integrity of the soil and prevent erosion, just as preventing deforestation can help. To further reduce flooding, reservoirs upstream of the Brahmaputra River could be constructed to hold excess water. That trapped water can produce electricity during the summer to meet irrigation demands of Bangladesh as well. Of course, the aforementioned flood prevention strategies were not without their flaws. Despite the Bangladesh government's implementation of drainage systems and flood management infrastructure, the amount of water is so great that these measures do not prevent the intense flooding. These solutions, specifically the reservoirs upstream and the flood-resistant housing, required increased investment, funding, and commitment from the Bangladesh government and aid organizations.
What have been the most recent developments of this issue in Bangladesh?
Good question. The issues of displaced people and rebuilding destroyed land has been complicated by the number of Rohingya refugees. With additional people seeking help, more resources are necessary than the government can provide. In order to cope with the increased number of refugees, over 40,000 Rohingya families in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar refugee camps were trained in shelter upgrade techniques before the monsoon season and the cyclone season last spring. The International Organization for Migration also oversaw the distribution of upgrade kits containing ropes, bamboo, tarps, and tools. While all these prevention and mitigation methods are very important, the greatest message I can send to the viewers is that action on climate change and reducing global temperatures will decrease the severity of all of these disastrous floods.
Thank you for coming on our show. See you next time.